My name is Average Joe, and I'm a proud geek with expertise in movies, superheroes, and animation.
And my name is Pixel Patch. I'm a joyful geek with an expertise in gaming, both tabletop and video.
Our mission is to bring nerd culture to the masses.
And by sticking it all under the microscope.
Welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast.
Movies, TV, mega comic books, or is that graphic novels, cartoons, groups, that's animation, Disney, Star Wars, Dragon Ball Z, Pokemon, and Digimon, and Mighty Morphin, Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Yu-Gi-Oh! And Nintendo, Cinematic Universes, Marvel, DC, Justice League, is Batman, Leagues with Superman, Flash, Wonder Woman, Avengers, Iron Man, Captain Jaws, Loki, Spider-Man, and Hulk and Logan, X-Men, Battlers, Allen, Galaxy, Guardians, Star Trek, Trick, Card, and Janeway, Nerds and Geeks from Gather Around, and join them in the Big Bad Shark, Average Joe and Pixel Patch, they peek under the microscope.
Hello there, and welcome to the Bat Jar Podcast, where we put nerd culture under the microscope.
Again, and again, and again, and again, to infinity. But not beyond. We haven't seen Toy Story yet.
Okay, well, there you go. We have Pixel Patch back.
Hello.
You have we were confirmed last week that you had moved, but we weren't sure if you were under a bridge or...
I am under a bridge in a very fancy cardboard box. I painted it. A lot of people don't paint their cardboard boxes, and I think that's what the leading cause is of dissatisfaction with cardboard box houses. Just smack a paint, make all the difference.
What kind of paint would you use on a cardboard box?
Well, I'd start with like an acrylic paint, and then use a sealer. So that like a matte seal.
Like a varnish?
Like a varnish, yeah. It keeps the rain out.
So you wouldn't use like house paint or spray paint?
No, spray paint would be... Well, spray paint might save the varnishing. Might give you an extra layer of varnish, but you know, I haven't properly tested that yet. Just kind of had to put it up before the rain season came.
Fair enough.
Yep.
Well, it's good to have you back, Pixel Patch, and
Thank you.
We'll have an announcement at the end of the episode related to you. So.
Yep.
This is like a way to try and get people to actually listen to the entire episode.
Oh, what if they skip to the end? No, there's no skip button. They're jogging right now. They can't put their hands to their phone. Stop it. Keep jogging.
Yeah, keep it up. Good work. We're going to try and talk about something today that seems fairly timely, just with the reality of the new Spider-Man movie.
Oh, yeah.
And other things that are going to be coming out this year. So it's almost as if the Bat Jar is aware of what's happening in the world and is... Even though Ben the Movie Buff pulled this topic out of the Bat Jar, it's as if the Bat Jar somehow like swished the papers around or changed the words on the paper.
Well, in one of those worlds, it probably did.
Okay, well, there you go. That's a good way to get us started here. So we are indeed talking about comic book multiverses today.
Right, which just in layman's term, it's like... There are several versions of our world. So there's a version where I'm taller or shorter or that I don't exist. If anyone's seen, not White Christmas. What's that one?
It's a Wonderful Life.
It's a Wonderful Life. That would be an example. If that was done in modern sci-fi, it would be an example of a multiverse. It's a universe in which George Bailey doesn't exist. So it's still an existing universe. But instead of it just being a small example shown to him by an angel, it would be an entire universe that actually exists parallel to his current one.
The first time I can remember being exposed to like a comic book multiverse was through the 90s Spider-Man show.
Yeah, and that one was a ton of fun. Like every 2 or 3 seasons, there's always like an alternate universe set of heroes that comes in and stuff like that. Like I don't know what it was, but the 90s Spider-Man just introduced like a ton of really good comic book tropes and just had a great job of writing. Like, what? How did they do like it's always the keystone for like X-Men is good, but the 90s Spider-Man just had it. It had the right kind of like flow.
Yeah, I mean that's a whole conversation for another day, but
yeah.
But certainly, like at the very end of the show, Spider-Man meets Spider-Man from other realities.
I don't know what kind of mind game this is, but I'm the real Spider-Man. The real Peter Parker. Guess again. See? Pete, old buddy, we're just as genuine as you are. But how can that be? Madam Webb says that we're each from different dimensions.
Reality is like a river that splits off into many parallel tributaries. These Spider-Men are from parallel realities, each as legitimate as yours. They're all you. with some slight differences.
Oh, don't let these worry you, Pete. They're just a little souvenir from my last fight with Doc Ock.
So, like, yeah, there's a Spider-Man who has Doc Ock's octopus arms because he kept them after one of the fights.
I like these. These are mine now.
There's one where he has like an Iron Man type suit and he owns a company because I guess he got lucky at some point. All that fun stuff. But that was my first exposure to like this idea of different Earths, different versions of the same character existing. Yeah, so we're gonna get into this a bit here, but there are theories in science that are proposing that a multiverse exists.
Yep, I've read those actually.
However, from what I've been told, a lot of the different theories contradict each other because they have different definitions for similar terms. So like they'll use the word dimension or the word universe, and they'll mean different things. So it's certainly, I wouldn't go as far as to say it's pseudoscience because they are actual scientists who are coming up with these theories.
Mm-hmm. But they are theories. Like that, I think that's the best way to go about it. And a really interesting thing is like when it comes to discussion, if you're not using a common set of phrases, I think everyone's just doing the work on their own. If you're not using a common set of phrases and meanings for words, things can get out of hand really quickly. Like when we trained in like logical thought, was one of our classes in university. One of the logical fallacies is the undistributed middle, and what that means is like nothing is better than a ham sandwich. And a ham sandwich is better than nothing, and nothing is better than God. Therefore, a ham sandwich is better than God. You're using the word nothing in two different ways, even though you're using the same word. So when you're discussing with someone or when you're researching for a scientific paper, it's very important to research and know the meaning of a word and establish, at least in your own paper, what the words that you're using, how you're using them. Yeah.
So we're going to try our best here to kind of get to the origins of like where in literature the first instance of a parallel Earth happened.
Ooh.
And then we're gonna get to
Is it It's a Wonderful Life?
No.
Asking now. Oh, dang, spoilers.
And then we're gonna get to like where it first appeared in comic books, and then we're gonna talk about the different multiverses that exist in comic books, and then we're gonna get to why these multiverses exist. So to get started here, the earliest example I could find of a story, like a work of fiction that portrays a character traveling to another world.
I'm going to take a guess. Is it The Time Machine?
No.
Ah, all right. I tried. I'm out. I'm all out.
So there's this story called The Blazing World.
Oh, interesting.
It was written in 1666
Okay.
by English writer Margaret Cavendish, who was the Duchess of Newcastle.
I actually know the name. Interesting.
It says here that it's considered like almost like a utopian storytelling function, because basically in this story you go through the North Pole and you come out the other end on another Earth where the stars are different and there's different like the sun and the moon are different, and apparently it's about a female character who goes to a society with talking animals and a whole bunch of other stuff going on.
Yeah. All right. So if we travel to the North Pole, knock down Santa, who we know is guarding the portal to to one of the multiverses, we could visit this Earth with new stars and new moons. Dang Santa! He's not actually benevolent. He's just a guardian.
Yeah. So 1666. That's pretty early on in the zeitgeist of or in the world of fiction and writing and whatnot. So she was certainly ahead of her time. As we get into this more, we have to start kind of eliminating things that we think are part of a multiverse. So
right.
This is a story about just a character traveling to another world.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's a parallel dimension or another universe. There are lots of stories about, different kinds of spaces. So you think of like the Phantom Zone,
right,
in Superman, where it's the same, this like pocket dimension where all these evil space criminals go. That's not considered a parallel universe because
it's inside of our universe.
Exactly.
Right. And so in that case, I would rescind my comment about the time traveler because it's not another universe. It literally it's our universe, but at different points in its timeline.
So the scientific theories I was looking at basically said that the universe we live in right now is what we call the observable universe.
Right.
Because it is the universe we can see. Because there are some multiverse theories that say, like, oh, the universe is so big that if you just travel far enough, you'll eventually run into another Earth with another set of stars in the sun that are the same as ours.
All right, Margaret.
So, yeah, exactly. So it's suggesting that, like, we have to, when we're talking about where we are, we talk about the observable universe. So, like, the universe that we live in has kind of limits because we only know so much about, like, where it is or whatever.
Right.
So 1666 was the first time that we had a story about someone traveling to another Earth. But it was many, many years later before it became kind of popularized in fiction.
I'm going to say the 1800s, maybe the 1900s. I'm going to say late 1800s.
Well, first we have to get to the origin of the term multiverse.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So the term multiverse was coined by philosopher William James for his 1895 essay, Is Life Worth Living?
I have no mouth, and yet I must scream. Yeah, all right. So what was his like whole idea behind that?
Well, it's not that, I guess he didn't have parallel worlds in mind when he was using the word multiverse.
Oh, okay.
He was writing about the multiple possibilities available in everyone's life.
Okay. So it's just like I make this choice and I go towards this, I make this choice, and then it was that line, that word was adopted to be used for like a multiple verse universe.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, because in theory, well, not in theory, it's true. Basically, we have many, many possibilities in our lives. We have decisions we make that lead to different potential paths. And, you know, I think one of the fun things about the multiverse as a concept is that it is kind of fun to, like, reflect and speculate on how your life could have been different if you had made different decisions. So, yeah, so the term multiverse, when it was first used in 1895, was not actually meant to describe the idea of like a omni-universe of like all these different universes kind of coexisting, but really just to describe this concept of having lots of options. But then the next instance I could find in literature of, we'll say, a parallel universe is the story Men Like Gods from 1923, written by H.G. Wells.
Okay. H.G. Wells is a good start. Sounds like we've got a winner for an actual multiverse theory.
So this is a book where a person actually transports its characters to another world called Utopia.
Okay.
And apparently it's an advanced Earth 3,000 years ahead of our development.
That's not sounding like a multiverse. Keep going.
Well, it's the thing. So it's a parallel Earth, right? So it's basically he's traveling to present day. Like they travel from 1921 to 1921, but it's an Earth where everything is much more developed. And and it's considered like a utopia.
Nice. Okay. So yeah, I would say that's a multiverse.
We should probably, time travel more or less, as we're going to try and do today, is not what we're talking about, because it depends on the version of time travel, I suppose, that you're talking about.
Yeah, there's some time travels that can like change the timeline and create a branching universe. Spoiler, Endgame. That's kind of an idea behind it, but most of the time travel is just changing your current world, not creating a new one. But yeah, that's more changing timelines than creating entirely new universities. I just created a whole new university by changing the timeline. Good job.
Well done.
Yeah. I worked hard on that.
The first instance I can find of references to a universe outside of the observable universe in comic books becomes, well, it's hard to say what you want to talk about, because people look to the first appearance of the Justice Society of America, where essentially all these different superheroes who were published in different comic books were in one comic book together.
Right.
Because up until that point, there was no indication that these superheroes even had the same world, like shared the same space.
That makes sense. Like, because when you're first writing a comic book, you're writing your character in a world. It doesn't, unless you're specifically starting, as they did, this huge like agglomeration of characters. There doesn't need to be like, hey, I hang out with so and so in this world.
But it got to the point where continuity between the different books published by the same company became the norm.
So, like, someone destroys New York in one comic series, and in the other one, they're just kind of hanging out in New York, and you're like, maybe we should work on this kind of thing.
Yeah, so the first instance we can find of a multiverse existing in comic books begins with Wonder Woman, actually.
Oh, sweet.
So Wonder Woman issue 59 from 1953.
Yowza. All right.
So you can imagine we're kind of 1600s, and then 1895 the word multiverse is created, and then 1923 we have a book where someone actually goes to a parallel Earth, and now in 1953, basically 30 years later, we have the first instance of that in comic books, and it's an issue where Wonder Woman it's called Wonder Woman's Invisible Twin, and it was written by Robert Kanigher and Harry G. Peter. And basically what happens is Wonder Woman crosses over to another Earth where there's essentially, they call it the twin because basically it's like it's basically a duplicate. It's a different world.
Oh, okay. And is it perfectly duplicate, or is it just kind of like there's some differences like we know in some multiverses now kind of thing?
Seemingly, it just like the notes I see here, it's like everyone on it is a double of everyone on Earth.
All right. There you go.
So I don't know. It's a one-off issue that basically shows her essentially encountering like as if it's almost like as a twin thing or like a duplicate thing where it's
Right.
like as if everyone's been cloned or something like that. But it indeed shows her like traveling to this place and meeting these copies of everyone else.
Mm-hmm. And they all have their own lives and stuff, and they're just like, we're just existing. We're just kind of doing our thing. It might not have been created for evil. Who knows? Maybe someone knows.
And, surprisingly, no one in comics really did anything with the concept for a good many years after that, because it was in 1961
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
that we had the next instance in DC Comics, anyway, of a potential multiverse. I'm sure you've heard of The Flash before.
Oh, yeah.
So the original Flash in the comics was a guy named Jay Garrick.
Mm-hmm.
He had like a red t-shirt, no, not a t-shirt, but a
Lou
sweatshirt.
Gehrig, got it.
And he had like a metal helmet with little wings on it.
Yep.
And he was published by DC Comics in like the 1940s. And basically post World War II, like most superheroes, he kind of disappeared. They stopped writing about him. And then in the late 50s, they decided they were going to try and bring back these superheroes that had been kind of died off and become less popular.
And is this where his new design came in, or is this still the wing design?
Well, that's the thing. So Barry Allen, the Flash that most people know because of like the TV show and the movies and stuff.
Right.
This is where they introduced his character.
Oh, okay.
And in the first issues of Barry Allen's Flash, they established that the Jay Garrick Flash, so the one from the 40s, was a work of fiction. That indeed, like Barry Allen had comic books of Jay Garrick as the Flash.
Oh, yeah, classic.
And that's what partially inspired him to take up the name of the Flash.
Right.
So yeah, the Flash costume that you're most familiar with, it's like basically like a red onesie and a hood. That is Barry Allen's costume, and that debuted with Barry Allen in 1956.
Nice.
And a lot of people would call that introduction of Barry Allen as the start of the Silver Age of comics, where all of a sudden superheroes were starting to become cool again.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, they had that kind of reference in the first issue to suggest that, oh, like those old Flash comics that Jay Garrick was in, that's just work of fiction now.
We're used to, or like Spider-Man. Oh, that's just a comic book that we read about Spider-Man. Yeah, there's some parallels there.
Yeah, so basically what happened there is DC Comics was basically trying to reinvent all of their old characters. So they took the name and the powers, and they came up with a new concept, a new look, and a new name. And
Nice. Okay. Yeah,
so
wow.
the Flash was the first to get that treatment in 1956.
And Wonder Woman persisted as she was for a little while longer, at least.
Yeah, so like Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, they were so popular they just kind of kept them going.
Okay.
That caused continuity problems later, but basically so the next instance we have of the multiverse existing in comic books is we have the Flash number 123.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
In 1961. Because in this story, it's called Flash of Two Worlds.
Nice. Okay.
And
that's sounding pretty promising.
So in this comic book, Barry Allen travels to the world of Jay Garrick.
Oh, okay.
So
Sweet.
the Flash can move so fast that he can basically vibrate into another dimension.
Nice.
All right, so imagine there are multiple versions of Earth, One where the Nazis won World War II, one where Kennedy was never assassinated.
Oh yeah, one where all of us are evil.
Been there, it sucks. So all of these Earths occupy the same place in space, but they vibrate at a different frequency, so they can't see one another.
Yeah, but it's like if you can go fast enough, then it's possible to open like a breach and then travel between worlds.
Yeah.
But how could you travel that fast?
Well,
which is classic Flash. He always causing those multiverse problems. So then in this new world, Jay Garrick is an actual person, he's living his life, and the multiverse is in his universe, his Jay Garrick's world echoes into our world in the form of comic books. So the reason they know about Jay Garrick is there's this like such a close world overlap that the echo of it inspired someone to make like a comic book kind of thing.
Yeah, and so this story, and this is 1961, so this is many, many years ago, but this introduced the kind of the core of DC's multiverse theory, is that each Earth occupies the same space, but each different Earth or each universe vibrates at a different frequency.
So I want to go to the slow universe, take a nap.
So to say that because the Flash can move so fast, he can literally vibrate his body so that it moves from one plane of existence or one observable universe to another.
Man, he's got a huge advantage in terms of knowledge. Like he could just get a whole bunch of stuff done. Then again, I'm pretty sure oh my goodness, Lex Luthor creates machines that
probably the Flash doesn't stay the only person who can travel between worlds for very long.
Yeah, they're just like, well, if he can do it, we can all do it. He's got a multiverse, you idiot. We've all got multiverses.
There's a writer for DC Comics called Grant Morrison who does stuff nowadays, and he in an interview like talked about the multiverse as if it was like a song, and to say like each Earth is like a different vibration or a different part of the song, and so like the multiverse as a whole is like the whole song, and then each different universe is like a small component of that.
Oh, nice. I want to go to the Fast universe and get a really nice cup of coffee. Bring it back to the normal universe. It'll probably kill me though.
So that issue of the Flash was kind of like a one-off that established that like, oh, those old Flash comics still exist. It's not that they were just kind of written off as, oh, it's now fiction. Those Flash comics exist, and anyone who grew up reading those Jay Garrick Flash comics can take, I don't know, comfort in the fact that he does indeed exist in the world of the Barry Allen Flash, just on a different Earth.
We're still here, folks, and it's kind of a way to explain away the changes without needing to do too much redaction kind of thing. It's like, oh, I know we said this, but that's in another universe.
Yes, and we'll get more into that later. But this was more successful, so only 2 years later, the same writer, Gardner Fox, decided to cross over not just the Flash, but the entire Justice League with a Justice Society. Mm-hmm. So they had established in the 40s that the Justice Society existed, and it was like where the Jay Garrick Flash and the Alan Scott Green Lantern were part of a team of superheroes. And then as part of the Silver Age, they kind of relaunched the Justice Society as the Justice League.
Nice.
And so that's where you have Flash, Superman, Batman, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And so they actually had a story in Justice League of America 21, 1963, where the Justice League is beleaguered, or they're beaten by villains from Jay Garrick's Earth.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. Yo, you in Barry Allen's Earth? We're going to come in and beat you up.
And so the Justice League contacts the Justice Society and asks for their help.
Nice. So there's like this huge team up between worlds?
Yeah.
Oh, that's super cool.
So by this point in 1963, they've pretty much firmly established that, okay, yeah, like all those old comics we wrote that don't seem to get referenced at all in our modern comics.
That's because we're not currently in that universe.
Yeah. Well, so all these old comics we wrote, yeah, they're in a different universe. So, like, they still exist, and we as the writers have the ability to, use these characters and bring them into the fold. They're just they're on a different Earth. So
right.
That's where they are.
We're just on a different frequency, guys. We're just we're gonna get on the same. We're on the same page. We're just on a different frequency. It's a high frequency page.
So that's kind of like the way that DC Comics has always looked at the multiverse, because like from there they've done all kinds of different stuff, but obviously they have competition in this business of comic books, And that's where Marvel Comics comes into play.
Nice. So DC Universe, Multiverse Theory, what's the buzz? Let's see what Marvel's at. Let's ring in Marvel to see what the buzz is.
So we've talked about this stuff before on the podcast, but basically, yeah, Marvel Comics did exist in some form in the 1940s, and they had some success with superheroes, mostly Captain America. And their company kind of moved away from doing superheroes altogether after the war.
Right.
And it really wasn't until after Justice League came out and was a success that they started doing superheroes again. So their golden age, if you will, when they were creating all of their superheroes for the first time, was in the official Silver Age of comics, but they would call it their golden age because that was when they were making all the popular characters.
All the good stuff.
And generally, the way that they just kind of folded in their old comics, instead of saying, oh, like Captain America took place on a different Earth, they just wrote it into the story that Captain America was frozen in ice, and so they were able to have him wake up in the 60s and meet all the other Marvel superheroes that were being created.
That's really interesting. So the main reason for the freezing in ice was to bring him into the modern characters because people liked him so much. Mm-hmm. That's really funny. I never actually thought about that. I was just like, oh, he just froze in ice because that was the story. No, we just did it because we needed him. We need Captain America.
Yeah, so they decided to go around the creating multiple universes thing and just, have him be frozen in ice.
Nice.
And then the only other Marvel characters that existed at that time were like the Human Torch that was a robot.
What? There's a robot version of the Human Torch?
Yeah, that was the first Human Torch was a robot.
Then he's not a human torch.
He
might be a torch.
I never thought about that. Yeah, that's kind of weird. And then Namor the Submariner was their other character from like the 30s and 40s.
I don't know that one at all. Okay. Interesting.
He'll be in the movies eventually.
Yeah. Behold the Submariner!
It's basically like Aquaman.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Except he wears a green Speedo and has little angel wings on his feet.
Aw, it's so cute.
And he has a widow's peak.
Oh, okay. No.
And pointy ears.
Nope. No, I'm done. I'm out. I gotta leave.
So because Marvel had less success with like superheroes in the 30s and 40s, they were able to just kind of like port over their old superheroes to their comic books, and they didn't really see much of a need to tell stories involving different universes because they were able to just kind of keep it straight, more or less.
Right.
However, they started taking the trip down the multiverse path.
Oh, a little trip down multiverse lane. Maybe I'll sample a bit of Universe 10, maybe a little bit of Universe 2501.
They started exploring alternate realities with the comic book series called What If?
I do remember that. Okay, wait. Let me see if I can give a synopsis from what I remember. It's the idea of at pivotal moments during superheroes' lives, what if like a different character gets the powers, or what if they don't get the powers at all, or what if someone dies when they lived originally in the comics, and it like shifts the future of that character. Am I remembering that right, or is that?
No, that's pretty much correct. So this comic book series started getting published in 1977.
Nice.
And it basically asked the question, what if? And so every issue was like a standalone story, kind of like, I guess, almost like the Twilight Zone or like some of those sci-fi shows that just talk about random different stories. But yeah, the idea of what if is every issue is like, what if this particular character made a different decision, or if events played out in a different way.
Welcome to the scary door.
Yeah, so like I remember one issue of What If where it's like, what if the Fantastic Four didn't get their powers?
Then they just remain scientists working in the world, or
well, it's like
Dr. Doom still?
It's like they get into they still have the accident, but it doesn't actually give them any superpowers.
Oh, jeez. Sounds terrifying.
Yeah. Or, one of my famous...
You wrote this one? That's amazing. Average Joe, I didn't know.
No, like, I think one of my favorite what if stories is like, what if Spider-Man kept the alien symbiote?
Interesting. Okay. Oh, that's a big one. So what happens in that one?
I can't remember.
Oh, okay.
I think he just basically becomes like a dark version of Spider-Man.
Spider-Man 3?
Well,
we don't talk about it. Cut the mic.
But yeah, so like the way that Marvel Comics chose to explore the multiverse or explore alternate worlds is basically by asking questions of like, well, how would these situations play out if decisions were different? So like, what if Gwen Stacy survived that incident on the Brooklyn Bridge? All kinds of random situations that pop up as a result of the potentials. And as we've kind of talked about earlier, it is kind of fun to think about decisions on our own lives or turning point. Not that we're fictional characters, but
we're just like, hey, there was a big turning point at that point in my life. What if I had, worked a little bit harder on this, or what if I had done this differently? Which is kind of interesting. And that brings me to an interesting point about multiverses for myself, if I can go into that.
Of course.
Yeah. For me, I find that I have the same problem with multiverses as I have with time travel. A lot of the ideas is there's 2 layers to multiverse and time travel ideas. One, it's the whimsical, what if we could do this or that, or what would happen, kind of like scientific theory, what would happen if I did this, this, and this. But I find there's a second layer to it that a lot of people tend towards, and that's the idea of not taking proper responsibility for the life that you have. It's just like, you have this life that you should be living. You can't have time travel to fix it. There's no multiverse to get out of it. You should be living a life that allows you to, be happy with the choices that you've made, and you need to live in the present and work towards that future instead of being stuck in the past or being stuck on in regret. This is like the life that you're living now. You're not living 10 minutes from now. You're not living an hour ago. You're making a choice now, and every choice that you make should be one towards good. And I find a lot of times when it comes to like time travel and multiverse theories, a lot of people are just kind of like flippantly, trying to not worry about the choices that they're making in this life, whereas people have to be very aware that it's just like, yeah, you're making choices, and these are important. Like, you have agency in your life, and to hold on to that.
So, in other words, it's like the whole concept of the grass is always greener.
Yep.
Instead of being happy or content or at peace with your life as it is here, you're thinking about potential futures or potential situations that if only things had gone differently, or only this had happened that way. Or
Precisely. And there is, of course, the fun of multiverses and time travel, of the whimsical, oh, what if? Or like, hey, this is a fun thought process, but after a while you have to stop the what ifs and get back to doing the duty of the day kind of thing.
So the Marvel version of the multiverse is rooted in, like, there's many different kind of propositions of how a multiverse could work.
Mm-hmm.
But there's one called the many worlds theory, where basically suggests that like every potential decision exists as an option.
Right. So like if I have breakfast this morning that I have a muffin instead of cereal, boom, new universe. Like everything exists. It's a lot of worlds.
And so the idea of
muffin world is best world.
Well, it's the thing. So like for Marvel, the only way in which you can create a multiverse or have a different universe is that it has to be like a spin-off of like a character's decision.
Right.
And to say that, we can explore all these different alternate futures or all these different universes as a result of different pathways in life. Like, and I think that's something we can all kind of connect with to understand, like, yeah, like if I made this decision or that decision at this point in my life, it would have gone in a very different direction. It might have not changed the entire world, but it would have changed like my little world.
Yeah, so it's like I could have become Hell's Angels.
and
go biker world.
Because superheroes are such grandiose characters, and their decisions do frankly have a larger impact on the world they live in. Mm-hmm. It is understandable to believe, oh yeah, if Spider-Man chose to keep that alien symbiote, it would probably have a
butterfly effect. It'll so the butterfly effect, the small action will lead to like a big reaction. And most of the time it doesn't happen. But yeah, with superheroes, as you said, they just carry a greater impetus.
The DC version of the multiverse is closer to what some call like the membrane theory, basically suggesting that like each universe is like a page in a book.
Oh, okay.
So it's like each page in a book is a separate entity. Like it exists as a page, but
it's still part of this big old book.
Yeah. So like the creation of each different Earth is not, or each different universe is not necessarily as a result of like someone's decision making and tangentially creating them, but it's the fact that there are all these different Earths with these variations that are vibrating at different frequencies.
Nice. That last page is just straight fire. What is happening? Well, the burning question is, why is the first page ice?
And to say like, oh, it's not to say like this is the DC version and this is the Marvel version, because they've certainly both blurred the lines in the past.
Mm-hmm.
Like there was one animated movie I saw called Justice League Crisis on Two Earths.
Yeah, that's actually a really good one.
And in that one, Owlman, who is the
Batman of that universe, right? Yeah.
He explains how he understands multiverses to the audience and to Batman because they're having a conversation.
Before there was thought, there was this place, one Earth, with a single history. But with the coming of man came the illusion of free will. And with that illusion came chaos. With every choice we make, we literally create a world. History branches in two, creating one Earth, where we made the choice, and a second, where we didn't. That's the secret of the universe, you know. Billions of people making billions of choices, creating infinite Earths. Some so similar to each other you could spend a lifetime searching for any distinction. Others so radically different, they defy comprehension.
If you saw an image of it, there'd be like one Earth at the center, and then like splaying out like a whole bunch of like little interconnected bubbles would be all these choices going on infinitely. Kind of like if you were looking at the Milky Way, Earth Prime would be at the center, and all those stars would be all these possible universes.
Yeah, which is interesting because that's much more of a Marvel, I guess, approach to it. Is the idea of split decisions helps creates the different universes. But
Muffin World is best world. Yeah. I want a T-shirt of that now. Muffin Universe is best universe.
So I present to you Exhibit A.
Ooh. A Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Yeah, so
I'm holding the book now in my hands.
Yeah, so I have a copy of Crisis on Infinite Earths, which is a comic book miniseries that was published in 1985 by DC Comics. And we're going to get into more of the business side and the storytelling side of like why comic books have chosen to incorporate multiverses into their work. It really comes down to easiness and convenience. Because as I mentioned earlier with the Flash thing, instead of trying to find a convoluted explanation as to why Jay Garrick had been inactive for all these years, when Barry Allen was introduced as the Flash,
right,
they could easily just say, oh, it's in a comic book. And then later when they said, actually, we want to use Jay Garrick as a character, we want to bring that world in, they could say, oh, it happened on another Earth. And so over time, as DC Comics continued publication, they had books and series that were happening in at least 15 different universes because they were slowly like buying up other superhero companies like Fawcett Comics where the Shazam characters were published, and they would occasionally have stories where they crossed over.
And someone just left the faucet running and it overflowed into their universe.
Oh.
And they didn't want to water down the character, so.
Yeah. So they started approaching the multiverse is a way to like, okay, well, instead of like trying to find ways to incorporate all of these characters into the larger DC, we'll just keep them in their own little universe, and then they can kind of hop over for a crossover story when they need to.
Nice.
And really it comes down to continuity because comic books have the very difficult job of essentially maintaining continuity over decades. And so every time you have a new writer come on the series,
he has to do his research, or if he doesn't, he causes problems.
Yeah, so it becomes almost like a limitation on new writers and creators who come onto a comic book series because they have to deal with the fact that there is decades of continuity, and there might be stories they want to tell that have already been told, or there might be stories they want to tell but they can't tell now because characters they want to use are dead, or characters that they want to use were just used in a story so they can't use them again.
Or the characters are a certain way and they can't just like make their own stuff. Like, it's interesting.
So DC got to the point where not only was it hard for the writers to actually tell good stories without relying on decades of continuity, but they were also finding it was very difficult for new fans to come and pick up the books. Because unless you've been reading The Flash for 10 years, you're going to be very lost as to what's happening.
So is this where the reboot came in then?
Yeah, so the DC approach to the multiverse.
The multiverse collapse.
Well, like that's the idea. So this story, Crisis on Infinite Earths, was written to basically destroy the multiverse. It was a way for them to basically say, okay, everything is going to end, and then there's going to be, after this, there's going to be one universe, and all the characters are part of the one universe.
I'm reading the back pages. So
it was a way for them to make things easier for the writers, make things easier for the audience, and just tell sharper, cleaner stories because, getting things bogged down by decades of continuity and various different versions of characters is very confusing. And they kind of, even though the idea of a multiverse is fun and say, like, oh, there's this universe where this version of Batman exists, and there's this version where, Dick Grayson grew up and even as an adult was still Robin and married Batman's daughter, and, there's all these fun potential worlds they live in, but at the end of the day, it gets very confusing for writers and artists to do so.
Yeah, so the line is, multiverses, thousands of universes dying, millions of worlds perishing, and out of it all, a new Earth is born. Ever hear anything like that before? What a shame. A real shame. I'm the only one who remembers the infinite Earths. You see, I know the truth. I remember all that happened, and I'm not going to forget. That's, oh man, like it's crazy. Crazy, crazy stuff.
So how do you feel about that as a business decision?
I mean, it makes sense. It's still saddening, but after a while, it's like Lego. Things just get out of hand. Like Lego at one point had like 60,000 different types of bricks, not like different like product lines, but like different types of bricks, and they like cut down to like 5,000 or something. It was ridiculous. Like at some point, you have to focus on the core of what you're doing, and you can only tell. It's kind of interesting because like since the invention of like writing, we've been able to tell bigger and bigger stories. But I think at a certain point, a human person is only able to follow so much story over their lifetime. That's why series end, not because it's like, well, yeah, I've told the story, but there's only so much that a person can know and follow in a story. So this makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, and again, I guess it's a difference in approach because the way the Marvel approached the multiverse is to say most of our stories exist in the main timeline or main universe, and then we have all these fun little what-if stories that are being published that kind of like spell out all the different worlds of our multiverse. Whereas the way DC approached is they had groups of characters who were kind of exclusively part of different worlds, and so the way that they would just kind of like write them as if they didn't know any of the other characters, and then they would do the crossovers where they met each other.
Right. Makes a lot of sense.
And the Crisis on Infinite Earths allowed DC to kind of adopt a more Marvel approach and have all of the characters in one plane of existence, in one observable universe.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't stay like that forever.
Nope, they started going back to multiverses again because after doing it, they're just like, you know what, this is fun.
Yeah, and honestly, like between DC and Marvel, like there's been at least 3 or 4 resets where the multiverse is either reestablished and different Earths have been propped up again. And I think it's because they really realize the concept of like a what-if story
is interesting to people. Like, people know the characters. We know they'll do this and this, but what if they didn't?
Yeah, so this is where I want to bring in the concept of Elseworlds.
Oh.
Yeah, so DC Comics has done a lot of one-shot stories over the years under the kind of like the banner of Elseworlds. Mm-hmm. And Elseworlds is basically
where Elsa lives.
Oh.
Gotcha.
No, it's basically, I would say it's the equivalent, unlike What If on Marvel, that's basically like a monthly series that always goes into like one kind of potential scenario. Elseworlds are basically different little mini-series or one-shot stories that explore potential realities. So the very first one was a book called Gotham by Gaslight.
Okay. And that one is, Gotham by Gaslight sounds like an 1800s style.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's Batman as if he lived in the 1800s and he fights Jack the Ripper.
Nice. That actually sounds pretty cool.
There's a lot of Elseworld stories about Batman.
Because he's just popular and we want to put him in everything.
Yeah, so there's like one where he gets a Green Lantern ring. So it's like Bruce Wayne is chosen to be a Green Lantern.
Oh my gosh, that would be terrifying.
There's one where essentially Catwoman is in the role of Batman. Like she's the one who becomes the crime fighter of Gotham, and Batman's kind of like the thief love interest.
Ooh.
There's
Tuxedo Mask.
There's a story called Red Sun where Superman's rocket landed in Soviet Russia instead of Kansas.
Oh, buddy. I comrade is so strong.
Yeah, no, really, that's basically what it's about. And then, of course, as there's been so many different movie and TV versions of DC and Marvel characters, they've basically been like identified as different Earths in the multiverse, because the way the characters look, the way that their origins are told, the way that their stories are played out, the versions of the villains and the side characters are all different enough that they come across as like, you know, different versions of the characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I can certainly appreciate being a writer of a comic book, wanting to kind of do my own take on the character instead of having to like if I want to write Alfred a certain way, but I have to kind of like stay in line with how Alfred's been portrayed in the last 20 years. I'm limited in what I can do.
Whereas I can create an alternate universe of Alfred, the Muffin universe of Alfred, which is the best universe, where he, you know, turns the entire Wayne Manor into a mech and just fights crime with it.
Now, this is popping up more in our movies and TV shows as of late. The Arrowverse.
Yep.
Which is the collection of superhero TV shows that air on the American network called the CW. Originally, it was just Arrow, and then they spun off The Flash from Arrow.
Yep.
And then they did a third spinoff called Legends of Tomorrow, which was all side characters from either Flash or Arrow.
And with The Flash especially, his like time traveling and going to different worlds definitely popped up again, especially in the later seasons. And so you've got the multiverse and TV series, stuff like that. Doctor Who did a lot of multiverse stuff. Even though they had a lot of time travel, there was a lot of alternate Earths that popped up when they accidentally crossed dimensions with the power of the TARDIS.
Yeah, I think Sliders is probably the most prototypical example. That's a show from the 90s about people. They're literally just sliding between different parallel universes the whole time. But certainly on the Arrowverse, we see the kind of trends continue over from comic books, wherein the Supergirl TV show was originally airing on a different television network altogether, and it was assumed that it had no connection at all to the other shows. But then Barry Allen travels to that Earth in an episode, and you learn that, okay, the events of everything that happens on Supergirl is on an Earth separate from everything that happens on The Flash.
It's just like, gosh.
And what that does for the writers is that they can write the episodes of Supergirl without having to like create explanations as to why all the other characters aren't around to help solve problems.
Or consistently have to refer to Flash's episodes and stuff like that. Yeah, no, that makes it a lot easier.
But this December, they're doing their own version of Crisis on Infinite Earths.
And they're going to cross over, and there's going to be Supergirl and the Flash.
I mean, they've been doing crossovers for years now, but the fact that they're choosing to adapt this story would suggest that they're going to try and actually like merge the universes.
That's going to be scary as heck. Let me know how that goes.
And of course, most recently, we had Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse,
which kind of spawned this whole multiverse discussion in a way. Well, no, it was just timely, because I think the thing was put in the bad jar beforehand.
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing. Like, I think maybe someone from like a parallel universe outside of our observable universe came and put that topic in the bad jar, because I honestly don't remember how it got in there.
Oh, there we go. The Illuminati confirmed. But yeah, like the Spider-Man Into the Multiverse, Kingpin, Into the Spider-Verse, which is a multiverse, which is a Spider-Verse. Oh gosh, the Kingpin in the current universe of Spider-Man, his wife dies, and so he creates like a large hadron collider kind of thing, just like lots of energy being pumped into one area to open up a portal to a parallel universe where he can find his wife alive again. But through that, and through Spider-Man running into that beam, instead of bringing his wife out, another Spider-Man ends up coming out. So it's bringing in that universe, and at the very end of the movie, there's a few other universes that are noted. So we're definitely going to get another Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie, which is fantastic.
Yeah, hopefully it won't be called Into the Spider-Verse again, because
Into the Spider-Verse twice now. Into the Doubleverse.
So this idea of the comic book multiverse is becoming popular again because of things like Into the Spider-Verse. And again, like in the trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home, you hear mention of the fact that Quentin Beck is from another Earth.
We could use someone like you on my world.
I'm sorry, your world?
Mr. Beck is from Earth, just not ours.
There are multiple realities, Peter. This is Earth, Dimension 616. I'm from Earth 833. We share identical physical constants, level 4 symmetry.
I'm sorry, you're saying there's a multiverse?
Whether that actually ends up being the case or not.
Yeah, because, spoiler, Mysterio isn't always the most honest villain in the Marvel world. But if he is, then that's going to open up a lot of stuff for the later movies. And with Doctor Strange there, it's pretty easy for them to kind of tap into those other universes.
So I realize I probably have way more experience with comic book multiverses than you do,
heck
Pixel
yeah.
Patch. But
Yep.
of the ones you've seen, or like the different variations of superhero characters you've seen, do you have a favorite multiverse?
Oh my goodness. Some of the Flash ones are really nice.
You can use Batman Beyond for this if you want.
Yeah, that one's pretty darn good. I'm trying to think. Like, there's a few TV shows that I watched where the alternate universe versions of it were like really, really fun, and I really, really enjoyed it. Batman Beyond's definitely a winner, though. Like, I just really like the kind of mildly creepy future punk setting. Like, I'm a big fan of steampunk, and I'm a big fan of cyberpunk when it's not too intense. And Batman Beyond was really good cyberpunk.
For me, if I had to think about it, which I'm doing now, there's one in the Marvel multiverse wherein Spider-Man lost his right leg in his battle with the Green Goblin.
Okay.
And so he retires, settles down with Mary Jane, has a family, and has a daughter. And that daughter, as a teenager, discovers that she has all of his powers and becomes Spider-Girl.
Nice.
And so it actually like had its own line of comics for a while where this May Parker, because they named her after the late Aunt May, this May Parker was Spider-Girl, and she was basically like, it was as if it was another Spider-Man series, but except it's Spider-Man's daughter instead of him.
I have two characters then that I like. I really like Gwenpool. No, sorry. Well, yes, Gwenpool is a thing, but Spider-Gwen. I really like Spider-Gwen in terms of her design. Like, absolutely very, very cool design. I think that's one of the main reasons I like it. And there's a female Deadpool that's not nearly as inappropriate, and it was written by one of my favorite comic book writers, Christopher Hastings, who used to write the Dr. McNinja comics. And it was a girl whose superpower is to know the comic book stories of every character she encounters. So she knows how they're going to act. She kind of has Deadpool's like fourth wall breaking knowledge, but it was given to her by a character outside the universe who gave her the comic books of all the characters in her universe. So she meets Spider-Man, and she sees one of the bad guys who's going to be a problem later on. She's like, should we just kill him now? It's like, what? Why? Because he turns evil later. We should just kill him now. And I was like, no, you can't do that. And it really, really fun. I highly recommend it. Christopher Hastings does an amazing job with the writing, and it only ran for 2 years, so you can probably grab all of it in like a compendium. But yeah, Gwenpool.
So I think we can, who knows, maybe like there's different versions of the Batch Art podcast on different potential universes.
Yeah.
The science is obviously not there. It's all theoretical. Yeah. And like I said before, there
is a version of the Bat Jar where everyone is inside the Bat Jar with us.
Ooh.
And it's like some weird totalitarian Bat Jar universe.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, the Bat Jar surrounds the world.
Oh, I know. I was going to say my favorite DC multiverse is, I think it's called Earth 16, because it's where Young Justice, the show, takes place.
Nice. Where would Teen Titans be? Because they have a multiverse now.
Yeah.
I prefer their version of the multiverse than the recent one we have.
Oh, yeah. So if anyone's super curious, the main universe that Marvel Comics is set on is called 616. I don't know why it got the number 616. It just did. And DC Comics is Earth 1.
Earth 1. We're more important. Marvel's like, yeah, we're just one of those. Just one of those universes.
Yeah. So that's going to wrap up our conversation on comic book multiverses. Is there anything that you want to know about multiverses we didn't mention? Do you have a favorite multiverse we didn't mention? Probably because we didn't mention all that many.
Are you from a multiverse? And we'd really like to hear from you with that.
Right. Are you from a dimension outside of our observable universe?
Mm-hmm. And if so, we're sorry we didn't get your email. We can't observe it.
Speaking of email, this is normally when we go into the Bat Jar and look at our mail, but we don't have any this week. So
only sadness.
Yeah, maybe on there's a different Earth where we do have email this week.
Where we have too many emails. Don't know what to do with them.
Yeah, I'd like to be on that Earth, but I'm happy where I am. I don't want to fall into the trap of, looking
The what if? Yeah, no, you got to be in the present, in the now.
Fair enough. So I'm happy to be where I am with you, Pixel Patch, and even though there is no mail, we should remind all the people on this Earth and potentially other Earths how to get a hold of us.
And that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward. You don't need a multiverse meter in order to contact us.
I don't need to vibrate my molecules in order to pass through dimensions.
No, don't stick yourself in a microwave. That will kill you. It will not send you to another multiverse. It will send you to the afterlife, which is not a multiverse. And, well...
That's part of our observable universe?
Yeah, I don't know, actually. Kind of. It's not really observable, but, geez, my mind bends. But if you want to contact the show with a normal question in this universe or an idea for an episode, you can send us an email to
batjarpodcast@gmail.com.
And you can tweet at us on the Twitter sphere, on the Twitterverse.
Ooh, the Twitterverse.
The Twitterverse.
Yeah, we do spend a lot of time in the spoilerverse.
Yeah, so I guess the Twitterverse is a
Wait, is that like a pocket dimension in our universe, or is that a parallel Earth?
I think the Twitterverse would be a parallel Earth.
But what about the spoilerverse?
The spoilerverse is also a parallel Earth, where no spoilers are problematic. Everyone just spoils everything all the time, and it's all good.
Oh, man. One of my old roommates would love to live there.
Yeah, just live in the spoilerverse, because then you just know. Do you either know everything, or you don't care what you know and don't know?
All right.
Well,
sorry.
enter the spoilerverse.
We're on Twitter at the Bat Cookie Jar.
Yeah. Oh, the cookie jar. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, YouTube, even though you can't play YouTube and close the app unless you have premium, which is just ridiculous. Get on that, YouTube. Fix that.
Just start paying for it.
I don't want to pay for it. I don't like YouTube. Yet I use it.
We love them because they let us post our stuff on there.
Yeah. Like, I guess if I say I hate them enough, they'll just demonetize us.
Wait,
Spotify,
we can make
SoundCloud.
money on this?
I don't know. Apparently, I've heard people on YouTube make money, and I'm not sure how. Wherever you get your podcast, share, post on Facebook. That really gets us a lot more traction. If you review us, it helps. Like, pause for a few minutes before the next announcement. Send us a quick 5-star, 4-star review. I don't know.
Yeah, if you're jogging right now, stop jogging.
Stop jogging.
Just for the right review.
Good job jogging this whole hour. That's impressive. I don't think I could do that. I've done like a half hour. That's pretty much it. Ever. I'm kidding. And like our page, because we want everyone to join us inside every version of the Bat Jar.
Oh, every version.
Yeah.
There were 2 different Bat Jars on this Earth, and then one died.
Oh, no.
So now
was it the Crisis on Infinite Bat Jars?
Oh, maybe. Who knows?
It had to be all collapsed into a single Bat Jar.
So this is normally when we go into the Bat Jar and find out what we're going to talk about next time, but Toy Story 4 is out, so that'll be the topic for next week's episode.
Boom!
And
apparently it's really good.
Yeah, initially I was against it, having it on the show, but I'm like, if it falls enough into the lens of nerd culture that people can get upset about it. So
yeah.
If people can get upset about it and be triggered about it, then it must be something worthwhile talking on the Bat Jar.
No, I've heard good things about it. There's a big existential crisis. I also saw a meme that says in Toy Story 4, there is the existential crisis of toys realizing their own mortality. And in Toy Story 5, they ascend from their toy bodies and like fight each other in the heavens or something. It just gets crazier and crazier.
Well, hopefully, anyway. But no, I have to bring out the power sword.
Oh. Da, 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 da.
So people will remember when Pixel Patch joined the show as a full-time host, Asian John gave him a power transfer with the power sword. And so all of the Bat Jar hosting power went into him. And what we're going to be doing now is basically something very similar to what happened in Power Rangers Lost Galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
On that show, one of the actors who played the Pink Ranger, during the filming of the series, she was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, jeez.
And like the actress in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So she obviously had to step away from the show. So they found a way to write her character out of the show. They did a crossover with the previous season of Power Rangers, and they basically had her like have this heroic sacrifice in which her character dies, and then somebody else takes over being the Pink Ranger. And not to say that you're going to die.
so I'm dying to myself because I'm getting married.
Oh, good enough.
That was for you, my dear.
But no, So yeah, like in that season of Power Rangers, the one actor left the series for a while while they were getting cancer treatment,
Right.
and then they were brought back when they had finished their treatment. So Pixel Patch here is going to be taking a sabbatical, a hiatus from the Batjar. And so what we need to do now is extract the
hosting power so it can be moved on to others who will use it for good.
Yes, but it's not like it's being sucked away forever because it is it's a sabbatical, not a retirement. So, all right, if you can just grab the power sword here.
Yep, got it.
All right, I'm gonna knight you,
Nice.
and the power will go back into the sword.
And then we're gonna just close that off. There we go.
Yeah, so for the next 6 months or so, we're going to be having kind of a rotating roster of hosts from parallel universes, different versions of Pixel Patch.
And I've lost all my podcast power, so now I sound like this for a bit. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Oh boy! But no, basically what you'll start hearing every week is kind of an alternating roster of switching back and forth between Ben the Movie Buff and Dr. What.
And an all-star cast, really.
An all-star cast, yeah. As if this is like a radio drama or something.
It is a radio drama. There's going to be so much drama. What? Ben the Movie Buff, you've returned. I have. And I have seen a new movie. And it'll be like in like a Bollywood version. Every week will be from a new universe. You'll have an old-timey episode. So today we saw this story of toys in which the small ceramic doll became sentient. It's a good idea.
So Pixel Patch, since you're going to be away for a while, is there any words of wisdom you want to pass on to the Batjar audience?
Oh my goodness. Just keep listening, keep enjoying, and keep trying new games. You keep trying new things. There was one thing that I realized a few years ago is that I didn't always enjoy all the new things that I tried out, but there was a lot of times where finally getting around to trying out like a new sport or reading a new comic book or trying a new board game that, maybe a quarter of the time, maybe half the time, I found something that I truly loved and wish I'd gotten into earlier. So if there's something, even just watching one episode of a show you've meant to watch or something like that, go for it. It's always worth it, and you might find something that brings you a lot of joy, and that's always worth it.
Those are some good words.
Some words that are good.
Yeah.
Good uns.
So Pixel Patch, it's goodbye for now, but not forever.
So long. Farewell. Da, da. I've got the super complicated death machine from The Great Mouse Detective stuck on my head.
Okay.
I highly recommend you all watch The Great Mouse Detective.
Yeah, I've only seen it once.
Oh, man.
Because we reviewed it on the podcast.
Ah, there you go.
A few years ago. But all I have to say, Pixel Patch, it's been a joy to have you here, and I hope you enjoy your time away.
Yeah, Average Joe, it's been fantastic to be inside the Batjar. I will leave up all the things that I've pinned up and painted in the corners of the Batjar.
Please do.
Yep.
And we look forward to basically having you back, I guess, in the new year.
Yeah, as a married man.
2020.
As a married pixel.
Your vision will... A married pixel.
Multiple pixels.
Yes. Pixel patches.
Pixel patches. Yeah.
Okay.
Small patches here and there.
It's like you're digivolving or something.
Yeah. Digivolve to pixel patches.
All right, so come back to the Batjar podcast next week when we talk about Toy Story 4. And until that time, I'm Average Joe.
I've been Pixel Patch.
Catch you on the flip side.
One pixel at a time.